Did you think that losing weight was going to be easy? I did. And I eventually lost 50 pounds, but my gosh, it was such a grind. And I really wish I could have done things smarter to speed up the results. So to help make your journey 10 times easier, here are 20, yes, 20 brutal truths about weight loss that I wish I'd known sooner. Number one is that no one cares. You might think they do because we've been conditioned to believe that our weight loss journey is going to look like some kind of rocky cutscene. But the reality is, everybody is too wrapped up with their own lives to worry about yours. There's 3 stages to your weight loss journey. In the first step, a few people will care, but the second phase is where most people fall off because that's the longest and the loneliest phase. After you've kind of committed to doing what you're doing and you've been doing it for a couple of weeks, people will get bored. People will move on. Look at the news cycle these days. Every single day, there is a new story. There is a new disaster. There is a new catastrophe. There is a new celebrity breakup or drama or whatever it might be, and the world just continues to move on and on. So it's all well and good at the beginning when you have the added accountability, motivation, support of other people who are sort of cheering you on from the sidelines. The hard part is doing the long journey alone. And then the third stage happens right at the end when you've got the result that you set out to get. And this is where people then start to pay attention to you again because they're like, hey, how did you do that? You're like an overnight success. The reality is they've just forgotten about the time, the effort, the hard work that you've put in. And to make this truth even more brutal than it already has been, because I am very aware that we have dived straight into the deep end on this video, is that not only will people not care, they might even start resenting you. Why? Well, because you've got something that they don't have, but more importantly, you've got something that they want. They know deep down what they need to do. They know the work, the effort, the sacrifice, the compromise that goes into getting what you have got. We all like to believe in the fairy tale ending. We all like to believe it's going to be quick and easy and all that sort of stuff. But in a weird way, their resentment towards you is actually a compliment. They just haven't quite found the right words, the right way to convey their message to you. The second brutal truth is a lot softer than the first one, and that is that a pound of fat is a lot bigger than you might think it is. This right here is a model of what 1 pound of fat actually looks like. And as you can see, it's about the size of my face. Not quite the size of my head. If I like stretched it a little bit, it would be. But the point is, if someone had asked me back in 2018 when I first started my weight loss journey, before I'd lost the 50 pounds, how big do you think a pound of fat is? I would not have thought it was this significant. I wouldn't have thought it was this big. And I think this is a positive message to share with the world because you realize that actually you might not have as many pounds of fat to lose as you think you did. Jesus, I really need to give this a clean. Blech. Lesson number 3 is that losing weight is simple, but it's not easy. Let me explain what I mean. So fat loss, weight loss is basically 100% mindset. Because once you get the basics dialed in, the basics being your calories, your protein, your steps, your sleep, and how much water you're drinking, it really is just about doing those 5 things consistently. Simple things done well consistently. Those 5 words, if you can live by those, this is going to be easy for you. The reason it's not easy for so many people is that last word, the consistency. This stuff can be very monotonous and very boring. We are constantly tempted to try new things, to take shortcuts, to speed up the process. But funnily enough, the shortcut is the consistency of doing the basic things. The example that I always give my clients is that you want to be the tortoise and not the hare. Lesson number 4 is that there really is only one thing that you need, and that's a calorie deficit, where you are eating fewer calories than your body is burning, because that forces your body to use the stored fat, which I just showed you what it looks like, as fuel. The thing is, people like to dodge around this. They like to try the latest and greatest diet or the newest exercise regime or maybe the nice overpriced supplement that's just been brought onto the market or whatever else it might be. But rather than trying to go around the work, the quickest, the simplest, and actually the easiest way to get the result that you want is just to make sure that you're in a calorie deficit. Lesson number 5 is that you are never, I repeat, never going to be motivated to start. I think the best way for me to explain this is the 3 parts of a habit. So every habit has a cue, a routine, which is doing the habit itself, and a reward or a cost if it's a bad habit. Now, what most people do is they look at the habit front on. They think about the cue first, and then that's going to lead them to do the routine, and then they're going to get the reward. So for example, if they wanted to get fitter, lose some weight, whatever it might be, they might think, okay, I need to join a gym. I need to buy some new workout gear. And then those cues are going to make them do the routine. They know if to do the routine, they're going to get the reward. The best thing that you can do is actually to reverse engineer these habits and look at them from the back. Think about the reward that you are going to get. Burn it into your psyche. And whenever you don't want to do it, which, by the way, newsflash, is going to be every single day, just think about the reward that you're going to get. And equally, if it's a bad habit, think about the costs that you're going to have to pay if you do that bad habit, if you continue, if you maintain it. Try not to think about the short-term cost. Let's say you're a smoker. You know the short-term cost of smoking is going to be that you smell worse, for example. The long-term cost is obviously much more serious health risks, right? And the other thing you want to remember at this stage is that it's not a case that positive thought will lead to positive action. That's what most people think, and that's why most people never get started with this stuff. They procrastinate for weeks, months, maybe even years. What it actually is positive action leads to more positive thought. A really good example of this actually happened 3 weeks ago. A good friend of mine, funnily enough, from my personal life, joined my coaching program. And the day after he joined the coaching program, because he'd made that one positive decision, he started thinking more about his career, about his lifestyle choices, about all this other stuff. But the point to remember is that positive action leads to positive thought and not the other way around. Because you're not really after motivation. What you're really chasing is momentum. And momentum only comes once you take that first step. Lesson number 6 is that it will take longer and be harder than you thought it was going to be. Your brain hates change, and it's really going to fight you on this. It is constantly trying to stay in a state called homeostasis. So when you start to change the conditions of your lifestyle by eating a little bit less and moving a little bit more, and as a result starting to lose some weight, burn through some body fat, your brain is going to go, hold on a minute, what's going on here? We were quite comfortable where we were. Why are we trying to change? It doesn't know what's going on in your world around you. It's going to assume that you're in some kind of famine and you don't have access to food. And as a result, your brain is going to fight back. It's going to make things difficult for you. It's going to wreak havoc on your endocrine system. It's going to raise your cortisol, which is your stress hormones, because it's going to make everything feel harder. And it's going to play around with your hunger hormones, leptin and ghrelin. So in an ideal world, you want your leptin, which is the hormone that controls how full you feel, to be nice and high. And you want your ghrelin, which is your hunger hormone, which tells you how hungry you feel, to be nice and low. No, what your brain is going to do is flip that on its head. It's going to raise your ghrelin and lower your leptin. So you're going to feel hunger all the time. And then when you eat, you're not going to feel as full. So as a result of all of that, it's going to be harder. And because it's going to be harder, it's going to take longer because you're just not going to have that many perfect days. Lesson number 7 is that 95% of people who are trying to lose weight will fail to do so. So unfortunately, there's a pretty high chance that you might be one of them. However, there's some good news. Don't panic. 95% of people also aren't watching my YouTube videos. So the fact that you are here today, learning all the lessons, learning all the mistakes essentially that I made, means that actually there's a pretty good chance that you're going to be in the 5% of people who do lose the weight. But if you want that chance to be even higher, now would be a fantastic time to subscribe to my channel. So go ahead and tap the button. It might be here, it might be here, it might be here. Just tap the bloody button. Jokes aside, the reason that 95% of people fail is that they either go too hard too fast, so they go overly restricted, they go from sort of 0 to 100, that classic type of person, or they try and subscribe to a extreme diet, whether that's vegan, carnivore, keto. And they do these diets because they've worked for their friend, for their mum, for their partner, for whoever else it might be. Ultimately, the diet that's going to work for you is the one that you can stick to. And we are all different. So it's all about finding something that works for you. And then probably the most important word of this whole lesson is to make sure it's sustainable. Make sure that it fits into your life and you're not having to mold your life around it. Brutal truth number 8 is that the scales will lie to you all the time. And that's because there's a big difference between body weight and body fat. If you are in a 500 calorie deficit each day, which adds up to a 3,500 calorie deficit each week, you will lose a pound of fat each week. And the reason being is that there are 3,500 calories in a pound of fat. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to lose a pound on the scales. You have to remember that we as human beings are essentially just big bags of water with a little bit of skeleton, muscle, and fat kind of bobbling around inside. So your weight is largely going to be dictated by how hydrated you are, but also when you last ate, what you last ate, the quality of your food, when you last went to the toilet. There are so many factors that are going to influence your body weight. But if you want your body fat to consistently go down, all you really need to worry about, or at least all you need to worry about in the first instance, is being in that calorie deficit. And again, doing it consistently. Brutal truth number 9. Let me tell you something. When you say brutal truth 100 times in 10 minutes, it starts to really play games in your head. Anyway, brutal truth number 9 is that there is no such thing as a perfect diet. I've kind of already touched on this one, but I feel like it deserves its own point anyway. Like I said earlier, you can subscribe to vegan, carnivore, keto, paleo, Mediterranean, intermittent fasting, and all of these other diets if you want to. But just because it's worked for your mum, your sister, your brother, your partner, your dog, whoever else, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you. The most important thing to find is a diet that works for you. And to be honest with you, you don't even really need a diet, because a diet has so many negative social connotations. We think about it this way. If you're sitting around a group of friends and you're out for a nice meal or something, and you're all talking about what you're going to have in the restaurant, and someone goes, oh, I'm just going to have the salad because I'm on this weird vegan diet or something like that. Even though they might not say it outwardly, everyone is looking at that person thinking, gimp. So you don't want to be on a diet, really. And even if you did want to go on a diet, let's say you were like, I'm going to become a social hermit for 3 months. I'm going to go crazy. I'm going to go like David Goggins mode and lose 50 pounds. It's going to be amazing. Great. But then what? You don't want to be on a diet for the rest of your life. So I would actually kind of eliminate that word from your vocabulary. Maybe that's a lesson in itself. Brutal truth number 10 is that exercise isn't as important as you might think it is. And for this point, I want to use the analogy of 2 twins. By the way, this is a completely made up story. But let's say there are 2 identical twins. So they're exactly the same in every single way. They're the same height, they're the same weight. And to make things even more equal, I'm going to give them both the same 12-week training program to do in the gym. They're equally strong and they lift the same weight. But at the end of the 12 weeks, one of them looks like a Greek god and the other one looks like a bum. How has this happened though? They did everything the same and they even have the same genetics. But the truth is they didn't do everything the same because they only spent 3% of their time in the gym. They spent 97% of their life outside of the gym, and outside of the gym, their lives couldn't have been more different. One of the twins only follows his nutrition plan when he felt like it. He stayed up late at night, he went out partying all the time, and he didn't really push himself as hard as he could have in the gym. The other twin fully committed to his program and did everything that he possibly could to reach his goals. He went to bed on time, he drank lots of water, he got his steps in, and he ate a healthy diet. These are extreme examples at the opposite ends of the spectrum, but hopefully you see my point. The lifestyle, the habits that you have outside of the gym count for so much more than what you do in the gym. Yes, your training program is important, but your lifestyle, which goes all around that, is so much more important. Lesson number 11 is that cardio is completely pointless. A lot of people couldn't believe it when I lost 50 pounds in just 4 months, and they especially couldn't believe it when I told them that I didn't do any cardio. But I don't like being called a liar, so I came up with an experiment to prove my point. I strapped my Apple Watch to my wrist. Unfortunately, Apple Watch has since broken, and I found a route near to my house here in sunny Spain, which actually isn't that sunny today. First off, I walked 3 kilometers in one direction. Then I turned around and ran the same 3 kilometers back to the start point. What do you think the difference was in the calorie burn between the walk and the run? 50, 100, 200, 500, 14. You can see it on the screen here for yourself. If you look at the total calories of the walk, it was 241. But then if you look at the total calories for the run next to it on the right-hand side, it was just 14 more at 250. Look, I'm not sitting here denying that running has health benefits, but if, like me, you're not the biggest fan of running, don't think that you have to do it to get the result that you want. I think that's the biggest problem that we have at the moment, is that people feel that they have to do these extreme things to see any significant results. Because think about it this way, for the sake of 14 calories, which is going to be more sustainable and which is less likely to get you injured? I know which one I would pick every single day. Brutal truth number 13 is a good one, and it's one that you're going to kick yourself when you know what it is. If I was to tell you that there was a habit which you could do every single day and it was free, it didn't require you to do any crazy routines, take any pills, but it was going to keep you energized, clear-headed, and it was going to make it easier for you to stick to your calories and get the result that you want, you'd probably think that it was too good to be true, right? Well, that's exactly what drinking more water gives you. The thing is, everybody knows that they should probably be drinking a little bit more water. Everybody knows that drinking water is good for them, but so many people still struggle with it. And I think the reason for that is twofold. Reason number one is that they're just not focused on it. But reason number two is the reason they're not focused on it. And that's because no one's actually taken the time to explain why drinking more water is so beneficial, not just for weight loss, but for your overall health. Water is like your body's secondary energy system. Think of the calories that you eat like the fuel, like the petrol that you put in your car. But think of the water that you drink like the oil that you put in the car to make sure it doesn't break down. And the thing with drinking water is it really isn't that difficult if you focus on it. And the two very simple things that you can do to focus on it and therefore drink more water and get all of these other benefits are, number one, just have a bottle of water in front of you. It doesn't have to be like right here in front of you, but inside your periphery vision, because I can guarantee you, if it's in sight, it will be in mind. If it's out of sight, it will be out of mind. And number two is to invest in the habit. So if you really, really struggle and the first thing doesn't work for you and keep it in your periphery vision, you're still not drinking enough water, go out and buy yourself a water bottle. It doesn't have to be $100, £100, whatever it is. But if you spend $20, let's say, on a water bottle, even that small investment, I guarantee you, you'll be more focused on it because you want to get the most value for your investment. This is the awesome thing about drinking more water. Even though it's a little bit boring and it's certainly not sexy, it's such a high leverage activity because it gives you so many benefits. You're going to be hydrated, fueled, clear-headed, and energized all day. But probably best, and certainly best in the context of this video when we're talking about weight loss, is that water helps to kill your hunger. And it does that because when you drink water, it fills your stomach. And when your stomach is full, the walls of the stomach stretch. When the walls of your stomach are stretched, a signal is sent all the way up to through your body to your brain, telling your brain that you are full. Your brain doesn't know what your stomach is full of, it just knows it's full. So it's going to reduce the amount of ghrelin. Remember we talked about ghrelin earlier, the hunger hormone? It's going to reduce the amount of ghrelin in your bloodstream and it's going to increase the amount of leptin. So you're not going to feel as hungry and you're going to feel fuller. Brutal truth number 14 is that carbs don't make you fat. Listen, carbs have been accused for half the world's problems for a long time now, but today I'm here to defend them because it's not the carbs themselves that are the problem. It's our relationship with them. Think about it this way. If carbs were the problem, why are the Japanese people not fat? Japan actually has one of the lowest obesity ratings in the world, despite the fact that a staple of their diet is rice. Well, the answer is deep-rooted in their culture. You see, most Japanese people follow a Buddhist concept called harahachi bu, which very loosely translates to eat until you are 80% full. A pillar of Japanese culture is all around moderation, not just with their diet, but with every area of their life. In fact, there's a region in Japan called Okinawa, which is famous as a blue zone. You might have heard of blue zones. It's one of the areas of the world that has the highest number of centenarians, which is the people who are 100 years of age or older living there. And the other way to think about this is that 1 gram of carbs and 1 gram of protein both contain 4 calories. But no one is claiming that protein has made them fat, are they? Carbs aren't the problem. Gluttony is. So really, we should all be taking a leaf out of the Japanese book and embracing a healthier way of eating. Brutal truth number 15 is that you shouldn't listen to your body. I can sense some people freaking out on this one, but listen, this comes back to the point that I made earlier around homeostasis. Your brain wants to keep you the same, even if you are miserable, alone, overweight, and all the other negative things that nobody wants to be. And when you think you're listening to your body, you're actually listening to your brain. Your brain controls your nervous system. Your nervous system will send signals to your body telling you to do or to not do certain things. Essentially, it's telling you how to feel. But I'm pretty sure we can all agree that just doing what feels good is bad advice. Well, that's exactly what you're doing when you're telling yourself or you're telling someone else to listen to their body. Brutal truth number 16 is that the quality of the food that you eat is just as important as the quantity. So we talked earlier about the calorie deficit and the fact that that's the only thing you need to lose fat, which technically speaking is true. However, I think the calorie deficit message has been oversimplified over the last few years. Now, I'm a big fan of simplifying messages and making them as accessible to as many people as possible. However, if you just focus on the quantity of the food that you're eating, on the number of calories, with no regard for the quality of the food that you're putting in your mouth, you're going to make it so much harder for yourself. Processed and junk food is going to cause havoc on your brain and on your body, whether it's your endocrine system or even your gut health. So I'm not saying it has to be perfect, but as much as you can, make sure you're eating whole, nutrient-dense food. If you can stick within your calories and eat whole, nutrient-dense food, this whole process is going to be so easy for you. Brutal truth number 17 is that most people quit because they get bored. Now, I touched on this right at the start of the video when I said that fat loss, weight loss is simple, but it's not easy. And if you live by the words, simple things done well consistently, the whole thing will be a doddle. The challenge is the consistency. Once you build up the basic habits and you're doing them essentially on autopilot, it will get a little bit boring. But that's actually a good thing, because if it's boring, it means you're actually getting the results. So the hardest part then is to just keep going. And think about it this way. The step after boring is that you just won't even think about it. You don't think that brushing your teeth is boring, but you still do it, or at least I hope you do. That's because you know it's a healthy habit. Because what you're doing here, yes, you're losing weight, but that's almost a byproduct of creating a healthier lifestyle. Brutal truth number 18 is to not be tempted to change everything when you have a bad week. And I use the word when then. I use the word when because it's not a case of if you have a bad week. It is a case of when you have a bad week. In fact, it's probably a case of when you have several bad weeks. You will definitely have one. You will probably have two. You might have 3, 4, 5. You get the idea. The temptation when you have a bad week is to tear up your plan, throw it away, and start again. But that would be the equivalent of a pilot turning a plane around halfway across the Atlantic from London to New York and going all the way back just because he's deviated 1 degree off his course. You wouldn't expect him or her to do that, and I wouldn't expect you to do that with your diet. The real trick here, and the way I work with my clients, is to measure as much of the data as you can, because what you measure, you can manage. So if you are measuring how much food you're eating, whether that's the calories or the protein in an app like MyFitnessPal, if you are tracking how many steps you're doing, which by the way, your phone does automatically, if you are loosely making a note of how much sleep you're getting a night or how much water you're drinking or whatever else it might be, you have data. So now if you have a bad week, you can go back and look at that data. And the power of the data is that it takes your brain out of the emotional state and puts it back in the logical state. Because we make a lot of our decisions based on emotion, but that doesn't mean they're the right decisions. Brutal truth number 19 is that you don't want to compare your journey to somebody else's. A great example of this is 2 clients who I'm working with right now. One guy is called Antonio, and in his first week, 1 week, 7 days on my program, he lost 12 pounds. Contrast to that, I have a client called Michelle, and within her first 12 weeks, she only lost 3 or 4 pounds. But the important message here is that I don't look at Antonio and be like, oh my God, you are the king. And I don't look at Michelle and be like, you're a joke, you're a failure. Absolutely not. Because weight loss is relative. The reality is Antonio is a bigger dude. Now, I can't measure it, I can't prove it, but I would expect that 9, maybe even 10 of the pounds that he lost in that first week were water weight. But on the other hand, Michelle is a very petite woman. Come to think of it, I actually would have been worried if she'd lost 12 pounds in 1 week. Michelle's goals and Antonio's goals are completely different. And the other thing to think about here is the way they measure their progress. For Antonio, who's a bigger dude with more weight to lose, yeah, sure, jump on the scales every day, every week, and see how much weight you're losing. And that's awesome because it's going to give him more confidence, more momentum, more motivation, and he's going to keep going. For Michelle, it's probably not as worthwhile for her to jump on the scales that often because she knows the weight loss is going to be slower and it's going to be smaller. But that doesn't mean she's failing. It doesn't mean the program's failing her. It just means that there are other ways that we need to look at measuring her progress and her success. For example, clothes sizing. For example, how you feel, your energy levels, your sex drive, your hunger levels, how in control you feel of all of this. Because remember, at the end of the day, we're not here promoting a diet. We're here trying to build a healthier lifestyle. And finally, brutal truth number 20 is that your trajectory is far more important than the speed that you are traveling at. This is one of the first and without a doubt one of the most important lessons that I try to pass on to my clients, because when everybody starts, they want the result today. They want the result straight away. But the reality is, I would much rather that we get you on the right path and worry about your speed later. Because remember earlier I touched on momentum and I said it was far more important than motivation. Now the truth is that momentum is earned. It's earned by taking those first steps. The first steps are the biggest and the hardest, but the best part is that those steps get easier and they get smaller the more that you take. And that's down to momentum, because once you start taking those first steps and once you start seeing those small but significant wins because you've done the work, that momentum builds and it compounds, a little bit like interest rate on a bank account. But you only get the momentum when we know you're on the right path. So there is no value in going 100 miles an hour at the beginning of your journey. What we want to make sure is that you're on the right path, because if you were to go 100 miles an hour down the wrong path, well, you're going to crash and you're going to burn. So trajectory is far more important than speed, and speed will come once you're on the right path. So there you have it. 20 brutal truths that I wish I'd known way back in 2018 when I started my weight loss journey. And I can guarantee you, if I'd known what I've just taken you through today, my journey would have been so much quicker and probably more importantly, so much easier. But the truth is, I am just scratching the surface because, and this is a true story, whilst I was recording this video, I thought of another 18, which I've written down on my laptop here in front of me. So if you're not already, make sure you subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss part 2. Until then, see ya.